Okay, good afternoon, everyone. For the agenda this afternoon, we're going to take the state treasurer first. And then we have the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture. And then we had University of Baltimore, and then the Maryland Higher Education Commission. So we'll start with the with the state treasurer. Patrick Frank is our analyst. And I don't see Derek Davis. Oh, there he is. Okay. Go right ahead.
Okay. On the state treasurer's budget, on the first page is this bar chart that we have with fiscal 25, fiscal 26, and upcoming budget for fiscal 27. So you can see from that about 2/3 of the budget for the treasurer's office is reimbursable funds. That is mostly the state insurance program, which we will be talking about later in the analysis. On page 2 is the pie chart that shows the different components within the state budget. Once again, the largest item by about 2/3 is insurance coverage. Those are the premiums paid by state agencies for the state's self-insured program, which is administered by the treasurer. There's also some administrative costs there, personnel costs, and also Maryland 529 is in this budget now as well. I'll move on to page 3. Exhibit 2 shows the cost changes from 26 to 27. And I'm point out a couple of things. First of all, if you look at the total costs from 25 to 26, the actual year and the current year, they increased by about $50 million. And most of that increase is related to the reimbursable funds from the insurance program. I have some exhibits later that kind of go through why those costs are increasing like they are. That's the first point. Second point I'd like to make, there's some large one-time costs for major IT in the 26 budget, about $7 million in fiscal 26 for reimbursable funds and $400,000 in special funds. So 26 is a little bit inflated compared to what its ongoing cost structure is because of those costs. With respect to 26 and 27, the large changes in the budget, that shows on pages 3 and 4. The large one that increases it is $6.5 million for insurance coverage premiums. There's also, as I mentioned earlier, about $7 million being reduced for the one-time major IT. And finally, on page 4, it's about $1.4 million. This is ongoing IT costs for licensing and for the new systems that they have. On page 4, at the bottom of it is a very boring personnel table. They've got the same number of positions. Their turnover has been steady, and so there's not much to say here. There's really no changes going on, so I'll move on. The first observation has to do with the insurance program. I figure since this is 2/3 of the budget, it deserves a little bit of attention. So I'll go on to page 6, and this is showing in Exhibit 3 what the different workload is. The blue bars are the new claims. The red bars are the claims that are closed, and the black line is the pending caseloads. As you can see, for obvious reasons, in 2021, less activity, so there were less claims. It's been increasing steadily since then. They have been closing the claims at about the same rate as they've been opening, so they're managing the workflow. Page 7 is getting into the financial data now for the insurance fund. And what you see on this chart is the bars are the balances at the end of year for the different insurance accounts, and the black line is the actuarially recommended amount for the agency. So you can see since 2021, their balances have been below the actuarially recommended amounts. This does not suggest insolvency or anything like that. It just suggests that maybe it'd be nice to have a little bit more money in reserve for that is. And what you notice especially is if you look at the blue bars, there's at the bottom, that's for real and personal property. It's about $14 million in balance in 2020. It's actually negative $1 million in balance in 2024. So this is obviously the most interesting part of the insurance account. And I'll explain a little bit about that why on page 8 in Exhibit 5. And what you see here, and what really stands out, is once again in blue, is real and property insurance payments. And that is very, very much in 2024, 25, 26. And that explains the high cost, most of the high cost that the state has. Well, not all of it, obviously, because some others are changing too. But, and so that is really the real question for this agency, is how can you manage these costs? That's and keep the, because this is a cost that's paid by the state agencies and across state in the state budget. On page 8, also there's a paragraph that talks about a recommendation by the Spending Affordability Committee. A concern is of the state that we won't have as much money for catastrophic events in the budget moving forward. One idea is to purchase insurance. The obvious place to go to get expertise on insurance purchases is the Treasurer's Office. So the question here is, and this is what Spending Affordability Committee would like to know, is if the Treasurer's Office could do an analysis to see if there are opportunities to save money or to effectively use insurance to manage catastrophic events. I suspect that's a complicated endeavor, but the Treasurer's Office should be examining that. Second observation has to do with the state's investment portfolio. The reason I would suggest that this is important is because in December, the balance was $19 billion. That's billion with a B. So this is not a small amount of money. What this money essentially is the state's checkbook. What they do is they can invest those funds into very safe assets. Like with every checkbook, the most important thing is waking up the next day with at least as much money as you had the day before. This is not a concept. Yeah, this is not a way to make a lot of money, but it is. But you might as well maximize what you can. And so with the safe investments that are basically government bonds, highly rated bonds like that they can invest in, their MFR indicator for this is a couple of things. First, the bars is what's the 90-day average Treasury bill rate, which is a common benchmark for low interest yields. And then the line is the state's investment return over the period, which you can see from 2020 to 2022, the state's yield was a little more, and it was less from 23 to 25. There actually is a fairly clear explanation for this, and that is in the early 2020s, the state had invested a fair amount in longer-term bonds. The advantage of longer-term bonds is you get higher yields, and you lock those higher yields in. The risk with them is that if interest rates increase, you're still locked into what was a good rate a year ago is no longer such a good rate, and that is essentially what's happened here. As those mature, the state will go back and be closer to the 90-day Treasury benchmark. Final observation, Maryland 529. This is a new program for the Treasurer. I'll start with, basically there's 3 kinds of programs it has: the college investment plan, the ABLE program, and finally there's a trust, which is closed to new members. If you look on page 11, exhibit number 7, what you see is their advertising efforts and to get the word out on these programs. I'll start with this exhibit has 2 scales. On the left-hand scale from 1 to 9, this is in thousands. And also it's in thousands on the right-hand scale, but it's from 10,000 to 90,000. So anything on the right-hand scale is essentially 10 times as large as that which is on the left-hand scale. I say this because the yellow bars there are actually on the left-hand scale. That is the digital advertising. And so if you look at 2019, it's halfway between 1 and 0, but really it's halfway between 0 and 10. So that's about 5,000. So 2019 digital advertising impressions were about the same as the others. If you then go to 2022, what you see is digital and television are about the same, but digital is 10 times more. So basically you have 10 times as much digital advertising as you do television advertising. And finally, when you get to 2025, it's about 30 times as much. And so what we see here is a big shift from the more traditional older media to the new digital media. So why do I bring this up? Page 12, exhibit number 8. This is, I think, the purpose of this program is to get people to sign up for it and to take advantage of the opportunities to save for college, and especially the tax benefits associated with it. I think 2 important indicators are, first, the number of unique beneficiaries. That's how many people are going to benefit. And the second in the red line is the annual contributions. If both of those are going up, then you're moving in the right direction. And except for a bad year in 2023, I'm not sure exactly why people invested less, but they did. But generally, the lines are moving up. With that, I'll say that page 13, our recommendation at the Department of Legislative Services is to concur. There's some information about the most recent audit on page 14, and with that, I'll conclude my presentation and take questions.
Nice job, as always. I always think you explain things really well. I look forward to you coming in front of us. Okay, Mr. Treasurer, would you like to come on up and bring anybody with you that you need?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, committee. If I remember how these things go, I'll try to be as brief and as succinct as I possibly can.
That works.
I'll open with my closing first, that we concur with the recommendation to concur with the governor's allowance for fiscal year 27. I always forget to do that part, so I wanted to do that up front. Beyond that, first of all, Chief Deputy Treasurer John Martin is to my left. I believe you all are familiar with him. The DLS analysis that the committee was briefed on raised several issues related to the State Insurance Trust Fund and the Maryland College Investment Fund. In terms of insurance, I'm going to hit the first couple of points that were raised as it relates to the office's plan to increase the fund balance to actuarially recommended levels. For context, one of the office's responsibilities is to maintain the balance of the fund by collecting premium from state agencies to cover anticipated future claims. The pandemic years and the years that followed complicated actuarial analysis. In fiscal year 2025, the allocation to state agencies increased by over $15 million to offset the gap in the recommended fund balance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Secondly, the analysis recommended that the office brief the committee on our efforts to limit property losses and claims. And that's something we take very seriously within the office. Risk management, as we all know, is a team effort shared by all state agencies. And we remain focused on helping the agencies by like conducting safety inspections, complying with insurance companies' recommendations, and preparing for upcoming weather events. Those are just a few examples of the things that we do or undertake to keep state facilities safe for employees and Marylanders. And third, the analysis recommends that the office brief the committee on the feasibility of purchasing insurance for community-wide natural disasters and storm damage. Now, we have an existing commercial property program that insures against some kinds of losses, such as those caused by floods and windstorms, but the property must be state-owned and the recovery is limited. If the state were interested in providing coverage for commercial businesses or personal homes, we would have to explore other options, and two such options that I discussed in more detail in the written testimony are parametric insurance and catastrophic bonds. Both of these options require measurable outcomes such as wind speed, rainfall, and they come with a substantial cost. In addition to utilizing the bonding option would contribute to the state's debt. So, you know, that's obviously a policy decision, especially at this point in time. But if we were directed to do so, we certainly would. But to state the obvious, at this point in time, we think the cost outweigh the benefits. And then secondly, just with the 529 Maryland College Investment Program, the best thing I can say, everybody's pretty quiet right about now, and that's normally good news. If they're calling you guys or screaming at us, it's bad news.
No news is good news. For
Yes,
sure. Yes.
Health, they prepaid, although it's closed, and we're trying to slowly wind it down. We still have a healthy fund balance in that. I think it's around 140%. Something of that nature. So we're, even with the payouts and all of that, we're still in pretty good shape there. In terms of marketing, we got some very enthusiastic employees who take their job over there very seriously. So they're out marketing, particularly some of the areas that are, in terms of participation, they're a little bit lower than the other areas. They pay special attention there. They, work with schools in those jurisdictions. We don't have a great marketing budget, but we have enough to what I think to do to get the job done. We don't need anything more. So they're really working that. It's doing well, but that's something that we constantly keep our eye on, keep our focus on to make sure that's operating well. I guess I talked a little longer than I thought. I know that there's certain issues, that remain out there. Obviously, if you need us to come back and brief the committee or to have, separate meetings, we're certainly more than happy to do so. But just all the things that are within the state treasurer's office purview, that we are on top of it, dedicated professionals that are. You're getting your money's worth, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You're getting your money's worth.
Senator Bailey, do you have a question?
I do. And I would be brief. Thank you, Madam Chair. I did want to say, you're not joking when you say how quiet things have gotten around 529. Can we remember back just a few years ago?
I'm trying to remember what year that was.
It must have
22, I think it was. 23.
23.
Okay.
Standing room only,
Yeah.
right? And I applaud you. Your team did a great job. And, I've got children in college. I've got a child that's getting ready to come out of high school. Everybody's still talking about the benefit of the 529 and how happy they are. So I just wanted to make sure that you understood how much the citizens do. And I think everybody points out when we've done something wrong. They don't always point out when things are going very well. So I do appreciate what you and your team did. I did have, if I go back to the audit report from the summer, talking about one of the findings when we talk about the IWIF for workers, the compensation claims and related costs, about the follow-up, that there was the MIA audit talked just a minute about some deficiencies. That's something we can either follow up offline, but I just was curious about that. I had not seen anything about that response.
Let's do that. So we can go, if you will, line by line about what your concerns are, and we'll provide both verbal and written responses to any concerns that you may have. And that's sort of what I was alluding to. I figured that might come up, and we're happy to have that conversation with you, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We'll get in contact with you, and we'll work out the particulars.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have Keith Morris and Joyce Miller signed up. Are they part of your panel? Or
Yeah, they were. I think they were here just to take questions.
just to protect you?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think we're good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't see any questions.
But the people that follow me, give them a hard time, please.
I sure will. Okay, we have the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture. Connor Brown is the analyst, and Chanel Compton is the executive director. She's here. Okay, go right ahead.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Connor Brown, Policy Analyst with the Department of Legislative Services, here to present the fiscal 2027 budget analysis for the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture, or MCAAHC. MCAAHC aims to educate Maryland citizens and visitors alike about African American heritage in the state and oversees the operation of the Banneker Douglas Tubman Museum right down the road. To begin, on page 1 of the analysis, the fiscal 2027 budget for MCAAHC increases by $133,705, or 7.3%, to $2 million. On page 2, MCAAHC does have personnel deficiencies in fiscal 2026, totaling about $70,000, which are shortfalls related to lower than expected vacancy savings. Exhibit 1 shows an overview of agency spending in the fiscal 2027 allowance. Approximately 78% of the allowance supports personnel, funding 11 regular positions. Moving on to page 3, Exhibit 2 outlines line item changes in the fiscal 2027 allowance compared to fiscal 26 after accounting for proposed deficiencies. Personnel expenses increased by around $143,000, primarily due to a decrease in the turnover rate. On page 4 is the personnel section. As of December 31st of 2025, one position was vacant, and it had been vacant for less than 2 months. The key observation section begins at the bottom of that page, on page 4, with engagement at the Banneker Douglas Tubman Museum. As shown in Exhibit 3 on the next page, page 5, in-person visitors to the museum increased by almost 30% in fiscal 2025, reaching about 10,000 visitors. Online engagement, which does make up a much larger share, decreased by about 30%. That was primarily due to engagement on Facebook, but that was really due to unusually high engagement in fiscal 2024. And the fiscal 2025 level of online engagement is still higher than prior years. On page 6, Exhibit 4 shows the number of festivals, meetings, and similar events attended by MCAAHC commissioners. In fiscal 2025, commissioners attended 383 events, which is about a 17% increase from fiscal 24. There are also 2 new performance indicators that were added in the fiscal 2026 Managing for Results submission and are discussed at the bottom of page 6. These include public meeting attendance, which increased by 47% in fiscal 2025, as well as out-of-school program attendance, which increased from 11 students in fiscal 2024 to 14 students in fiscal 2025. Moving on to page 7 is a discussion on the museum's updated strategic plan, which includes goals around expanding the museum's impact over the next 5 years. By 2030, the museum aims to reach 20,000 visitors per year through on-site and off-site programming, serve 200 students and educators through educational programs, and increase private funding by 15% year over year. MCAAHC should comment on any progress made towards the museum's strategic goals. Also on page 7, the fiscal 2027 capital budget includes a $1 million capital grant to renovate the Banneker Douglas Tubman Museum's permanent exhibition honoring African Americans in Maryland. Additional information about that grant will be in the miscellaneous grant program's capital analysis. And then finally, on page 8, DLS concurs with the governor's fiscal 2027 allowance. With that, I conclude my presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Nice job.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any questions from the committee? Okay, do you want to come up?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. And thank you, Connor Brown, our newest budget analyst. You did a great job. Maryland is home to something no other state in the nation can claim. the only African-American agency that operates both a state museum and a heritage grant program. That is not a small thing. It means Maryland leads the country in preserving Black history, and your investment is what makes this leadership possible. The African American Heritage Preservation Program grant is administered jointly with our agency and the Maryland Historical Trust. Last year, we awarded 31 preservation projects, including sacred burial grounds, freedom schools, Underground Railroad, and sites of resistance. In alignment with our 5-year strategic plan, the Banneker Douglas Tubman Museum, Maryland State Museum on African American History and Culture, is in a new chapter of groundbreaking research, exhibitions, and educational programming. In FY25, our museum engaged over 100,000 people with our major exhibition, Sacred Spaces, which was covered by the BBC, Ebony, and the New York Times. Our youth after-school program is sending our students to Senegal this summer to connect Maryland's history to the African diaspora. We are also beginning new development of reimagining our new permanent exhibition that will be a major capital project. The permanent exhibit will amplify Maryland Black history in innovative ways to educate and inspire Maryland residents and its tourists right here in our state capital. Regarding research, through federal funding, our agency is doing the sacred work of researching 13 people of African descent who lived right here in our state in the 1700s and 1800s. Their remains were displaced in construction sites and land erosion. Researchers are now researching with communities to identify their descendants and appropriate burial grounds. This research is community investment that promotes healing, empowerment, and restoration throughout our state. In addition, we launched a landmark archival project that will archive the legislative office of Senator Verda Freeman Welcome, Maryland's first African-American woman senator, and our museum will be the flagship home of her legacy. Your support in our FY27 budget ensures that Maryland doesn't just tell this story, it protects it, it teaches it, and it honors the people who lived it. Thank you.
I don't see any questions. I think you're good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Connor.
Okay, next we have University of Baltimore. Sarah Baker is our analyst, and Kurt Schmoke is the president.
Got a broken chair. I was just going to move it.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Release this down.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to start with the fall enrollment with Exhibit 1 on page 4. After declining for 9 years, enrollment increased by 131 students in fall 24, which is due to the inclusion of dual enrollments. Prior to 24, applications and registrations were manually processed, resulting in dual enrollments not being processed in time to be included in the fall count. Now that it is automated, the processing time has been reduced, allowing for these students to be included in the fall count, thereby providing a more accurate picture, an enrollment picture. While undergraduate and graduate enrollment declined in 25, the rate of decline has significantly slowed, which may be attributed to the various programs and initiatives UBAL has implemented over the past few years, not only to increase enrollment, but to improve retention. And to that end, UBAL launched 2 initiatives, a strategic recruitment work group that uses collaborative data-informed decision-making to address enrollment challenges, and also to build long-term sustainable growth. And these goals of the work groups are listed on page 5. And they also launched a public dashboard community, which provides real-time enrollment tracking, identify those points of where they lose students. You may recall that prior to 2015, UBALT was trying to add freshmen in order to grow enrollment to 8,000 students, but they changed their strategy to focus on undergraduate students with higher academic credentials and who wanted to pursue undergraduate, and is shown on Exhibit 2 on page 6. You can see the impact of this shift in 2019 when graduate enrollment exceeded undergraduate enrollment. And over the past 10 years, graduate students went from comprising 45.9% of the student population to 55.2%. We asked the president to comment on challenges of stabilizing and growing enrollment. Moving to Exhibit 3 on page 7, which shows retention rates for undergraduate, graduate, and law students. In general, the retention rate for undergraduates and graduate students has exceeded 70%, while that for law students reached 93% in the 23 and 24 cohorts. The 6-year graduation rates for undergraduate students are shown on Exhibit 4 on page 6. And overall, the rates started to decline with the 2018 cohort and dropped to the lowest level with the 22 cohorts, which was the first cohort to really be impacted by the pandemic. However, the achievement gap persists between all students and African American students, and we asked the president to comment on efforts to improve the graduation rates of students and narrow the gap between all students, minorities, and African American students. Moving on to undergraduate institutional aid, which, as you know, impacts student success. In Exhibit 5 on page 9, you see that expenditures on aid decreased by almost $1 million between 2020 and 2022, reflecting a continuing decline in students in the pandemic, in which UBALT was able to provide other non-institutional aid, such as from their foundation. Spending has increased to around $2 million in 24 and 25. However, this only provides part of the picture, for it does not include what they spend on graduate students. As shown on Exhibit 6 on page 10, when including aid for graduate students, spending totaled around $10 million in 24 and 25, and overall about 66% of all aid goes to graduate students. Exhibit 7 on page 11 shows that undergraduates who do receive aid graduate at a higher rate, and overall community college students receiving aid graduate at the highest rate. Exhibit 8 on page 12 shows the impact of the continuing enrollment decline along with the pandemic has had on degree production. Since 2018, the number of degrees awarded has dropped by 45.2% to 657 degrees. On a positive note, I would note that the number of law degrees has increased from 164 in 2020 to 204 in 25. Discussion of the budget starts at the bottom of page 12. And in 26, UBALT faced a $3.1 million reduction of their appropriation, which is mainly met by eliminating 24.5 vacant and 9 filled positions. UBALT has also been impacted by the cancellation of federal awards and is shown on Exhibit 9 on page 13. As of November last year, 5 awards have been canceled, resulting in a loss of $550,000. Moving on to Exhibit 10 on page 15, which shows expenditures of unrestricted funds by program area for 25 and 26. Education general expenditures decreased 1.6% or $1.9 million. And note that the spending on institutional support goes down $3.2 million due to the elimination of positions and completion of the Centennial Celebration and Web Design contract in 25. And note that the spending on instruction grows by $1.6 million due to the expectation of filling vacant positions. Exhibit 11 on page 17 shows the proposed budget. Overall, state funding increases 2.7% or $1.7 million. Increases include $2.6 million in statewide costs, mainly related to health insurance, $1.1 million for general salary increases that are centrally budgeted in DBM, and about $191,000 for the opening of a new facility. These increases are partly offset by the removal of $1.5 million of one-time funding for the Schaefer Center and $719,000 related to increasing the turnover. Exhibit 12 on page 18 shows funding for per full-time equivalent students. And as you can see, the continuing decline in enrollment along with increased state funding has resulted in increase of state funding per full-time equivalent student, which has increased 225% from 2017 to 2025. The recommendation is on page 19, and that is to concur with the governor's budget. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much.
Good
President
afternoon,
Schmoke.
Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Kurt Schmoke, president of the University of Baltimore. It's pleasure to testify for you today.
It was nice to see you honored on the Senate floor the other day.
Thank you very much. With me today are Provost and Executive Vice President Ralph Mueller and our Senior Vice President for Administration and Finance, Barbara Augenbauer. I'd like to first thank the committee for your support of the University of Baltimore and Maryland higher education in general. And I'd also like to thank our analyst, Sarah Baker, for her analysis of UBalt and for visiting with us this fall. Madam Chair, we have a written presentation, so I'll just summarize some of the highlights. As you can see, the University of Baltimore at this time is somewhat of a tale of two cities. Our law school is doing just great. Both in enrollment, the applications there, the bar passage, things are going very well there. We are still somewhat recovering from COVID on the undergraduate side, but we had a plan that we've been working on, which is to move the university to be primarily graduate and professional students, and so we set a goal of being 60% graduate and professional, 40% undergraduate. We continue on that. We think that that's the best approach for us. As you know, when the university, for most of its history, was a private university from 1925 to 1975. When we became part of the USM system, the arrangement was, the requirement was that we come in as a upper division university only. So from 2005 to, I'm sorry, from 1975 to 2005, we didn't admit freshmen. We had transfers from community college that represented the bulk of our undergraduates, and then of course law school, business school comprised the strength of our professional programs. Now we have 4 great colleges. Law and Business, College of Arts and Sciences, and College of Public Affairs. And but our culture is such that what we do best is educate working adults, and that's our focus. So we continue to move towards being majority graduate and professional with some niche areas in the undergraduate side.
Don't you think
yes,
that seems to be the trend with most of the schools?
Well,
that the student body itself is older than it used to be.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. And the issue for us is that when UB got started in 1925, the focus was on working adults, and nobody else was thinking about them at that time. They were considered, quote, non-traditional students, but we were founded to focus on the adult learners. Now, all the universities, both the public and many of the privates, particularly with continuing education programs, and we have significant competition from a global campus. Right. Because their focus had been on the military bases for so long. Once they no longer had exclusivity at the military bases, they've also been marketing locally. So we have much more competition in that area.
So do you think that that's a competition for schools like yours, having UMBC out there? I've had the conversation a couple times in the last couple of weeks of a concern that students are going to think that
and let them know that there's certain areas that we really specialize in, that there shouldn't be an overlap. For example, we have in our College of Public Affairs a School of Criminal Justice. And as you probably know, we also have on our campus the Baltimore City Police Academy and Training Center. That's unique. Nobody else has that kind of opportunity. And what we're trying to do is have more involvement between our college and the Police Academy and Training Center to give an opportunity that's unique in the system. And of course, the police commissioner and the federal judge who's doing the consent decree think it's great because all the studies all over the country show that you have a highly educated police department, you have fewer problems in terms of abuse and things of that nature. So we're carving out some areas in artificial intelligence, for example, and also we, as you know, have an undergraduate program at Jessup Correctional Institution. We have 43 students there at the center, and we continue to do that. It's part of our civic engagement. And so there are areas on the undergraduate side that we can carve out, but where in the future, to address some of the issues that Ms. Baker talked about, we think we will address those through graduate and professional. And one final thing, you all have been very supportive of us on the capital side, and we recognize that if we're going to attract a number of high-quality students to our programs, we've got to replace our academic center. Our academic center was built back, well, in 1922, it was a used car dealership. And so, yeah, 3 buildings put together that haven't been renovated for 50 years. We need to tear it down, build a smaller academic center that's architecturally going to fit with our law school, which is an architectural gem, and has helped us attract a great deal of high-quality students and faculty.
Okay. There's just one question that I'm still puzzling over after all the different briefings from the schools this week and last week. It seems as though the student bodies are older. I mean, it's like 21, 22-year-old students. What I don't understand is what's happening to those students that are graduating from high school at 17, 18 years old. What are they doing in those years before they're getting back into the school situation? Yeah. I don't understand that.
Yeah, you know, we have probably the most effective dual enrollment program in the state. So we have, I think, about 800 students now.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah.
And then we try to encourage them when they graduate high school, either pursue the 2-year or the 4-year. Our community colleges, both the Baltimore City Community College and the CCBC, are doing a great job outreaching to those students. We don't get most of those high school. In fact, last year, I think we only admitted like 25, 30 students directly out of high school. Our focus, our average age of our undergraduates is 28.
Okay.
In the dual enrollment program, though, with the high schools has helped a great deal in channeling them to other institutions.
Yeah, good. All right, thank you.
Good.
Senator Bailey.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for you and your team coming down today. And I understand how beneficial it is for us to have, work with higher education so that we have a higher educated police department, right? It benefits all across the board. Is that something that in your institution that you are working towards enhancing that education?
Yes, absolutely. What happened, as you know, our police department was under a federal consent decree. One of the things that the federal judge noticed was that the police academy 6-7 years ago was located in an old abandoned middle school. So it was hot in the summer, cold in the winter. It was not attracting high quality recruits. So we had a building that was our former law school. We reached out to the federal judge and the police commissioner and said, we think that we have a response to that. They've moved in now, was this the 6th year?
Yes.
6th year that they have been in on our campus. Police recruitment is up, retention is up. Commissioner Worley has said that this has been one of the best things to happen. So, and the other thing that's occurred, Baltimore City Community College has agreed to give credit, academic credit for the courses that the young people are taking, sorry, they're all young to me.
Me too.
The academy. So they're getting community college credits, and we're hoping that they will also, because of location, continue with the 4-year program. So we think that it's benefited not only the academy recruits and also the continuing education programs, because the training center is there too. So it's not just the new recruits, it's some of the older officers. All that we believe is going to benefit them and the city and the state in terms of a better workforce.
Well, thank you very much for that. I think that's a big part when we're talking about recruitment, retention. You know, the fact that the police officers are there to serve our community, and I appreciate it. We're bound to hear from MHAC later, and they've got some scholarship opportunities, so maybe we can get more people in your 4-year degree.
Sounds good to me.
Good.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much.
Senator King, thank you very much. We look forward to you visiting us when you can.
I'm going to do that.
All right.
Absolutely. I'll take the committee with me.
Right.
Okay, next we have Maryland Higher Education Commission. Sarah Baker is our budget analyst, and Dr. Sanjay Rai. You want to come up to the table?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I will start on page 4 with student momentum metrics, which focus on those milestones that if a student achieves in the first year correlates with successful outcomes. One measure is the number of credits attempted and earned. In general, students who attempt 30 credits in their first year are more likely to graduate than those who don't. As shown on Exhibit 1 on page 5, after 3 years, the average number of credits attempted by full-time community college students improved from 23.1 to 23.4 and 23. The numbers of credits earned steadily increased from a high of 16 in 22 and has slightly declined to 15.8 in 24. The average number of credits attempted by students at a public 4-year institutions gradually increased to 29 in 2020, which was before the pandemic, and then declined to 27.9, but has since rebounded to a high of 29.3 in 24. So after steadily increasing to a high of 26.5 credits earned in 2020, the number declined the following year, but has since increased to 25.2 in 24. So overall, on average, students are not accumulating enough credits to be on track for completing a degree within 2 years for an associate degree or 4 years for a bachelor's. Another metric is students who pass both English and math in their first year are more likely to graduate. And this is an indicator of an institution is providing academic supports to help students succeed. As shown on Exhibit 2 on page 6, the greatest percentage of students who pass both courses reached a high of 31.3% for community colleges and 35.4% for those at the public 4-year institutions in 21. While the rate for the community college students declined to 28.4, it is still 9.5 percentage points higher than in 2015. Turning to online course enrollments on page 8, as shown on Exhibit 3, the impact of the pandemic can be seen with enrollment spiking in 2020 and then dropping by over 70,000 in fall 21. While the enrollment at the community colleges declined from a little over 40,000 in 2020 to almost 2,500 in 24, it exceeds the pre-pandemic enrollment of about 7,500 students. And this may indicate community colleges may have incorporated lessons learned from the pandemic to increase access to its programs through online learning. Turning to out-of-state learning placements, which are on-site learning and placements occurring in a state other than the home state of the institution the student is enrolled in. And these include clinical rotations and student internships. Exhibit 4 on page 9 shows that since the pandemic of fall 2020, the number of those coming to Maryland for learning placement has grown almost 61%. And most of these students are coming from Pennsylvania, DC, Virginia, West Virginia, and Indiana, with health professions accounting for about 65% of the placements. Now, students leaving Maryland for out-of-state placements has grown to 3,180 by fall 24, with the majority going to DC, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Delaware, and Texas. And 70.5% of those placements are in health profession programs. Turning to the budget on page 26, the 26 budget at the bottom of the page, the allowance includes 6 proposed deficiency that include over $181,000 to fund the extension of the MD CAPS contract, two totaling $307,000 due to the end of the Complete College America grant, and one for $250,000 to fund a shortfall in 25, which is related to the budget committees not authorizing the release of funds that were restricted pending a determination by the Office of Legislative Audits that MHEC made progress or resolved repeat audit findings. OAL found progress was not made, and in fact, two of the findings were repeat in the March 25 audit. To avoid closing 25 with a deficit, some expenditures were moved to 26. However, the funds were restricted to provide an incentive to correct audit findings, and backfilling the funds takes away this incentive. While DLS recognizes the shortfall in 25 needs to be addressed, it is recommended that MHEC's 27 general fund appropriation be reduced by the $250,000 to ensure that the intent of the failure to authorize a release of funds is met. Turning to Exhibit 5 on page 11 shows spending for 27, and as you see at 61%, Salinger accounts for most of the spending, followed by Nurse Support Program 2 at 16%. The proposed budget is shown on Exhibit 6 on page 12, in which funds decreased 2.6% or $3.8 million. And this includes $1.9 million related to the transfer of funds to develop the new student financial aid system, $1.1 million related to the Gear Up Scholarship, in which MSDE did not apply for the grant and therefore there are no awards to be made. $363,000 is due to the end of mandated funding for the Inmate Training and Jobs Pilot Program. And there was one-time funding of $300,000 for consultants to help with implementing post-25 completion goals, drafting the state plan for higher education, and develop action plan to address completion gaps. Turning to the Salinger formula on page 13, the allowance includes $77.8 million to fund the Salinger formula. However, a provision in the BRFA will level fund the formula at the 26th level through 2029. Exhibit 7 compares funding by institution under current law and to the BRFA. And under current law, Notre Dame of Maryland would receive the largest increase of $1.4 million. And this is related to almost a 65% increase in their undergraduate enrollment that is due to the inclusion of duly enrolled students. Exhibit 8 on page 14 shows the out-year impact of the BRFA compared to current law. And I just note that the current law funding is projected to decline in 28, reflecting the decrease in state funding at the selected four-year public institutions. Exhibit 9 on page 15 shows funding for education grants, which decreased $1.5 million, and I just previously discussed that in the proposed budget. The first issue of the status of revising program approval process, as set out in Chapter 963 of 24, starts on page 17. One of the provisions required MHEC to develop an administrative procedures guide for new program review process and publish it on its website by January 1st of last year. However, the guide could not be located on MHEC's website. Next, MHEC is required to adopt regulations establishing standards for unreasonable or unnecessary duplication of academic programs. Draft regulations were developed and presented at the October 2025 meeting of the commissioners and discussed at the December meeting of the Program Review Process Advisory Council. MHEC is continuing to refine the distinction between unnecessary and unreasonable duplication in hopes to present formal draft regulations at the Commissioner's spring meeting. Discussion of the new academic programs is on page 18. And under statute, MHEC is required to review each recently approved program and programs approved in the four immediately preceding years that were rejected to by an HBCU to determine if the institution, state, or her state suffered harm. The report was due in January last year, and annual reports thereafter. MHEC has yet to submit the report. Moving on to identifying emerging workforce needs, which is defined in statute as graduate level programs not offered by an institution, addresses a job or industry that is innovative, unique, and rare, and could level federal, state, or private funding. However, MHEC's list of emerging workforce needs includes occupations that need some college, no degree, or at least a post-secondary credential, and therefore includes occupations such as actors, ship engineers, barbers, and sales manager. The list of graduate programs to meet emerging workforce needs includes history and includes Canadian and Asian history, political science, and teachers. In addition, MHEC was required by January 1st of '25 to update the 22 state plan for higher education to include state and regional workforce needs. MHEC has yet to submit the revised plan, nor has a webpage for the 22 state plan been updated to include the workforce data. And why the workforce information is posted on MHEC's website is not easily found. We asked the Secretary to comment on the seeming disconnect between emerging workforce needs as defined in statute and the list MHEC has developed. Discussion of letters of intent starts at the bottom of the page. As stated in statute, beginning on January 1st, '25, MHEC was to require institutions to submit letters of intent for each new graduate program they intended to submit for approval. However, MHEC did not start accepting the letters till October 1st, and they received 28 in the first 2 weeks. On October 14th, MHEC sent out an email stating that due to the high volumes of letters of intent it received, institutions were to hold any new letters till November 1st. The date was then pushed back till December 1st. These delays impact when an institution can submit a program for approval, thereby affecting their ability to offer programs in a timely manner responding to the state workforce needs. We asked the Secretary to discuss the reasons MHEC did not meet statutory deadlines to implement various provisions in statute and failed to submit required reports. The second issue of the new student aid financial system starts on page 19. Statute required MHEC to implement the new system by July 1st of 2025. Currently, MHEC anticipates the new system will be deployed in the 27-28 academic year. MHEC has stated several factors caused the delay, specifically bid protests and appeals, which led to delays in finalizing the contract. We note that in '26, the cost estimate was $14 million. However, in the '27 submission, the estimated cost was revised to be between $10 and $20 million. So far, $3.4 million has been appropriated, exceeding the minimum by $3.4 million. We asked the Secretary to provide further information on the factors resulting in the delay of the project, if MHEC is on track to implement the new system by the 27-28 academic year, the estimated cost of the new system, and if student input was obtained in the development. The discussion on student loan debt tax relief credit starts on page 20. So the BRFA of '25 included a provision that reduced the amount of the tax credit from 18 to 9 million and required MHEC to submit a report by January 1st of this year on any recommended changes to statute or regulations to better align the allocation of credits. MHEC has not yet submitted the report, and we asked the Secretary to comment on why the report has not been submitted. There is a DLS recommendation to extend the $9 million cap through the '26 tax year and alter the due date of the report till December 1st of '26. I would note that since 2018, MHEC has provided DLS with various statistics about the applicants and those eligible for tax credits, which are listed on the page. However, this year, despite requesting the same information, MHEC did not provide a report that included the information. The last issue is of the increasing number of mandated reports not submitted starts towards the bottom of the page. And as shown on Exhibit 10 on page 22, the percentage of mandated reports that have not been submitted has increased from 35% in '23 to 58% in '25. Also, of the 22 joint chairmen's report requested between '23 and '25, 11 have not been submitted. We asked the Secretary to explain why MHEC continues to miss due dates for the mandated reports and the reason for the increasing number that are not being submitted. The recommendations are on page 23, and that is to reduce the general fund appropriation by $250,000 and add a provision to the BRFA to extend the cap on the student loan debt relief tax credit and alter the report date till December 1st of '26. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, you're busy.
Yes.
Okay, Senator Bailey?
I just wanted to say thank you for your work, but I'm waiting for any moment for you to say, and I hope you say it, this is a joke, right? And this is not truthful, that somebody didn't pay this much attention to what we asked them to do. Okay, thank you.
Dr. Rye?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair King and members of the Education, Business and Administration Subcommittee. For the record, my name is Sanjay Rai, and I serve as the Secretary of Maryland Higher Education Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to present the Maryland's Higher Education Commission's fiscal year 2027 operating budget response. I would first thank Sarah Baker, budget analyst with the Department of Legislative Services, for her thorough and very thoughtful analysis. We appreciate the diligence reflected in the report and the opportunity to provide additional context where helpful. I also want to thank the Moore-Miller administration for its continued partnership for a budget proposal that reflects a state's physical realities while preserving core investments in student access and institutional stability. Governor's proposed budget enables MHEC to continue advancing the administration's priority that no Marylander is left behind and every Marylander has access to affordable, high-quality post-secondary education. When I arrived at MHEC, the agency was still stabilizing after the operational disruption caused by the pandemic. We are managing backlog, legacy systems, and compliance gaps, all while demand for higher education and financial assistance was increasing. Today, we are in fundamentally stronger position. We are strengthening internal controls, we are modernizing oversight, we are increased transparency, and we are aligning higher education and more directly with Maryland's workforce and economic priorities. MHEC oversees a proposed $891.9 million FY 2027 budget. Approximately 98% supports direct student financial aid and statewide investments. Only 2% supports agency administration, compliance, and oversight. With 88 staff, including 25 dedicated to student financial aid, we regulate 57 colleges and universities and more than 130 private career schools and oversee programs serving approximately 345,000 students. We are launching the 2026 through 2030 Maryland State Plan for Higher Education. Formerly, the 2022 to 2025 State Plan was structured as a transitional post-pandemic bridge document. MHEC is now actively developing the comprehensive 2026 to 2030 Maryland State Plan for Higher Education, and it is on schedule to be submitted by July 1, according to the statutory deadline. We are strengthening academic program review application prevention. We are modernizing the financial infrastructure, and we have enhanced internal compliance and reporting systems. At a time when the federal landscape remains uncertain and volatile, we are trying to navigate this situation. Demand for financial aid and new academic programming is increasing because our outreach, modernization, and program alignment efforts are working. Today, my team is here to present the facts, answer your questions directly, and provide clarity where needed. Joining me are subject matter experts from across the agency. Deputy Secretary Elena Quiroz-Levanis will address the Office of Legislative Audits findings and provide updates regarding the student loan debt relief tax credit. Before she begins, I want to emphasize that upon my arrival, my leadership team immediately began addressing the audit findings covering fiscal years 2020 through 2023. Remember, this is the period 2020 through 2023. Of the 7 findings identified, 5 have been fully resolved, and the corrective action is nearly complete on the remaining 2. Following Deputy Secretary, Assistant Secretary for Academic Affairs, Dr. Emily Dow, will provide updates on the implementation of the enhanced program approval process and will respond to some of the observations from the DLS analyst. While strengthening oversight is critical, it is equally important to highlight the outcomes of this work. For the first time in 130 years, Maryland has opened a new medical school, the Emeritus School for Osteopathic Medicine in Hagerstown, Maryland, focusing on physician shortages in the rural areas. University of Maryland and Eastern Shore is going to become one of the only two historically black colleges and universities in the nation to offer veterinary medicine program and be the first institution in the state of Maryland to do that. We have supported the merger of Maryland University of Integrative Health into College of Notre Dame of Maryland to preserve institutional sustainability and expand opportunity. Morgan State University and the University of Maryland, Baltimore have worked together so they can both offer Doctor of Social Work degree. And Maryland has been selected by the Aspen Institute for its Transfer Step initiative, positioning our state as a national leader in building a statewide transfer system that streamlines pathways from community colleges to four-year universities. These examples demonstrate that MHEC is not only strengthening compliance and oversight, we are also enabling innovation and responsiveness to Maryland's workforce needs. After Dr. Dow's remarks, you will hear from Mr. Al Dorsett, Executive Director for the Office of Student Financial Assistance, who will provide an update on the development of our new financial aid system. Despite operating within an outdated infrastructure, Mr. Dorsett and his lean team have expanded outreach and hands-on support, significantly increasing financial aid applications year over year. A modernized student financial aid system is currently in development and remains on schedule for implementation in academic year 2027 to 2028. Mr. Dorsett will outline its enhanced feature and long-term benefits. Finally, Ms. Megan Music, Executive Director of External and Legislative Relations, will address mandated reporting compliance. Ms. Music joined my senior leadership team recently and has already strengthened centralized tracking, template standardization, and pre-submission compliance review process. The bottom line is this: MHEC is strengthening compliance, modernizing systems, and expanding opportunity, while remaining responsible steward of state resources. We appreciate the opportunity to respond to each issue transparently and constructively. I will now turn to Deputy Secretary Kiros Livanis to address the audit findings.
Before you start, I just want to just mention, you know, since I came to the Senate in 2007, MHEC has had issues every single year. And you know, every agency went through the pandemic just like MHEC did. MHEC is the only one that has these extensive issues this year. And I understand there are probably some extenuating circumstances here and there, but I need to have these questions answered today. As far as not submitting reports on time, I just don't understand why that can never happen. So I'm looking forward to hearing what the answers are.
We appreciate the opportunity, Madam Chair. We will give some explanations. Start with audit findings.
Good afternoon. Buenas tardes, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. For the record, my name is Elena Quiroz Lavanes, and I'm the Deputy Secretary at the Maryland Higher Education Commission. Before I begin, I want to state clearly that our entire leadership team is deeply committed to working hand in hand with the Maryland General Assembly. We view this subcommittee and its leadership as vital partners in our mission to serve Maryland's post-secondary learners. I also want to thank our DLS analyst, Sarah Baker, for her robust and thorough analysis of our budget and operations. Her insights are invaluable as we continue our path towards organizational excellence. I want to frame my response to the audit findings through the lens of new leadership and our commitment to addressing foundational issues. To understand our position on the recommendation found on page 10 of the DLS analysis regarding the $250,000 reduction, we must distinguish between the retrospective view of the Office of Legislative Audits and the forward-looking reality of our agency today. The audit findings reflect a period of significant operational disruption from April 2020 to November 2023. It is important to note that the current executive and leadership team, Secretary Rai, myself, our budget director, Mr. Samuel Jarai-Pandian, and our executive director of the Office of Student Financial Assistance, Mr. Al Dorset, were not present during the scope of the audit. However, we have accepted full responsibility for the remediation of these legacy issues. Since the release of the March 2025 audit, we have moved beyond temporary corrective actions to fundamentally restructuring the agency's internal controls. We have moved across the entire agency, regardless of whether a specific finding was issued. We are proactively developing standard operating procedures. This ensures that our progress is built into the bedrock of the agency's daily operations, providing stability and transparency for years to come. The numbers tell the story. Of the 15 specific recommendations made by the auditors, we have fully addressed 12. Only 3 remain in progress, and we are on track to resolve those. Let me outline our progress across 3 critical pillars: financial integrity, student-centered compliance, and program integrity. First, we are restoring financial integrity at MHEC. This specifically addresses findings 2, 3, and 7, which cited discrepancies between our internal systems and state accounting records. Regarding finding 3, the audit identified a lack of reconciliation for our financial aid programs. We identified the root cause of finding 3 was a historical accounting practice known as the wash process. Essentially, the agency was netting prior year funds from institutions against current year payments. This blurred the fiscal lines and confused the records. We have since eliminated that process. Today, refunds are reconciled within the same fiscal year that they occur, ensuring a clean audit trail. Regarding finding 2, which cited a failure to collect debts owed to the state, we have now instituted a fiscal firewall. Accounting supervisors now independently review and authorize every adjustment separately from the staff who process them. Furthermore, we have hard-coded a strict schedule where delinquent accounts are automatically referred to the central collection unit. Similarly, for finding 7 regarding community college pensions, we are actively reconciling contribution data and have implemented protocols to verify certifications before we release matching funds. Second, we are maintaining a student-centered focus. Every technical fix is ultimately about the student experience. Finding 1 noted delays in monitoring learners who owe service to the state in exchange for their scholarships. This left graduates in the past in limbo and the state without its promised workforce. In response, we have since reorganized the Office of Student Financial Assistance and enhanced staffing to the Service Obligation Unit. The result is the elimination of a backlog of more than 1,000 cases dating back to fiscal year 2020. We now utilize a monthly career-based service obligation report to track these students in real time so they are not left in limbo. Third, we're ensuring program integrity and accountability. Regarding finding 6 in the student loan debt relief tax credit, we have moved from passive processing to active verification. We now employ a triple-layer review process that validates loan balances, income, and residency, ensuring that tax credits are reserved for eligible Marylanders. Currently, we have 2 staff members dedicated to processing these applications, and to meet the high volume and ensure the rigorous verification required for program integrity, we recruit temporary support from additional areas within the agency. We are making it work through this internal collaboration while also doing the best with our lean operations. This brings me to the operational reality of our budget. To fully address the root causes of prior audit findings and sustain these improvements, including our new compliance framework and enhanced verification models, the agency requires adequate staffing rather than fiscal contraction. MHEC operates with a remarkably small administrative footprint. Of the proposed $891.9 million budget, only 2% of the total appropriation is dedicated to agency-wide operations. General funds primarily sustain core administrative functions, financial oversight, compliance monitoring, and program integrity and accountability. We ask for your support in maintaining these resources so that we can continue the work of building a more transparent, efficient, and learner-focused MHEC. I will pause here for any questions. Yesterday, we received that recommendation due to the detailed nature of our responses.
I guess I would just ask for your cooperation, where as we are going along and you've got a report that is due, and if you are not able to get that report done by the due date, that you let us know right away. It has happened for so long that we can't just let it slide every time. So really looking for your support to try and clean this up somehow.
Absolutely, and we will give more when we come to the report section. And,
Okay.
Are you going to mention the increase in the student applications?
I'll talk about it when I get to the tax credit. With that, I'll go ahead and turn it to my colleague, Assistant Secretary Dow.
Good afternoon, Chair King and committee members. For the record, my name is Emily Dow. I'm the Assistant Secretary for Academic Affairs at the Maryland Higher Education Commission. I too want to thank Sarah Baker for her analysis. I'd like to begin, my comments are focused on issue 1 in the analysis. So I'd like to begin by addressing the workforce needs analysis. I want to be clear that this analysis was developed in collaboration with the Maryland Department of Labor, Department of Commerce. It was discussed at multiple commission meetings and posted on our website for public comment. It is now a standing resource for colleges and universities in program development. We see campuses referencing it in proposals for new academic programs and leveraging it for academic program expansion. So it's doing its job. We held a dedicated presentation on these data and the relevant appendices at our most recent 2025 Higher Education Summit, which was attended by more than 300 people. Regarding the seeming disconnect noted by DLS between the statute and our workforce lists, we believe Appendix D meets the legislative intent by serving as the bridge between theoretical innovation and actionable academic planning. Identifying innovative and rare graduate level programs is difficult because these fields, like drone technology in the early 2000s, often lack established classifications and the subsequent data until they reach scale. Despite this, our methodology has been informed by an economic perspective, is forward-looking that uses existing data, and it identifies niche graduate specializations where Maryland lacks capacity. It's important to understand the technical limitations of the statutory definition, as Ms. Baker identified, of emerging workforce need program. Under the statute, a program must be at the graduate level, not otherwise offered in the state, and can leverage grant opportunities. This is an incredibly high bar than traditional labor market data and is not designed to measure in a single step. Because emerging fields don't often have the established degree paths, we begin our analysis in Appendix C by identifying emerging occupations using a location quotient. Again, this was informed by Department of Labor and Department of Commerce, which identifies existing occupations that are less concentrated in Maryland compared to the national average. Therefore, an opportunity for Maryland to have growth, therefore emerging. These are often occupations and industries that are, in fact, innovative, unique, and rare for Maryland, those where Maryland has the potential to lead, but we lack a mature workforce. This is where we capture the need. Once those needs are identified, we move to Appendix D. Here we identify the specific graduate programs that feed into these emerging occupations but are not currently offered by any Maryland institution. This two-step process, moving from emerging occupations to missing graduate programs, we believe is the only way to accurately flag opportunities to colleges that meet all 3 prongs of the law: innovative rarity, graduate level focus, and ability to leverage future federal or private funding. The DLS critiques that some common occupations appear in our broader lists misses the nuance of this pipeline. Sure, barber, actor appear in the general workforce scan, particularly in Appendices A and B, which identifies high need or in-demand occupations and relevant academic programs. Our emerging focus is strictly on those niche graduate specializations in Appendix D, like sustainable design or infant mental health, where Maryland has a clear void in advanced education. We are positioning the state to capture these fields before they become standard elsewhere, exactly as the legislature intended. The DLS analysis specifically mentions the field of history. While historians are a general occupation that appears in Appendix C, we specifically look for specialized academic gaps in Maryland's academic landscape. Currently, Appendix D highlights that Maryland does not have graduate programs addressing medical history or military history. This is not a mere academic exercise, and forgive the pun. It's a vital opportunity for our state's economy. Understanding the history of medicine is critical for public health policy and biohealth sectors, while military history is essential for the strategic leadership required by Maryland's significant federal and defense installations. By identifying these gaps, we are encouraging institutions to build programs that leverage Maryland's unique federal assets and long-term research funding. Beyond these specialized fields, our analysis also identifies the more mainstream, mainstream emerging areas that are critical to Maryland's future. Please indulge me for a couple of examples. Sustainable design and architecture. As Maryland leads in climate resiliency, we need graduate level experts who can design the carbon neutral infrastructure of tomorrow, a program gap we have identified in Appendix D. Infant and toddler mental health. With a growing national focus on early childhood intervention, Maryland requires advanced specialists who can address neurodevelopmental needs from birth, a rare and innovative field where we currently lack graduate capacity. Let me give you one more example. Our analysis identifies highly specialized interdisciplinary gaps like linguistics and computer science. While this may sound technical, it is foundationally integral to the further development of artificial intelligence. Standard computer science degrees are common. We have lots of them. But this specific graduate program focuses on the complex relationships between human language and computer technology. By identifying this as a missing graduate program in Appendix D, in other words, an emerging workforce needs program, we are providing a roadmap for Maryland to lead in the AI sector, ensuring our students are the ones building the next generation of large language models right here in Maryland, rather than losing that intellectual capital to other states. This field, much like other fields identified in Appendix D, is a prime candidate for the third prong of the statutory definition, leveraging resources. Graduate programs in linguistics and computer science are highly eligible for NSF, or National Science Foundation, and Department of Defense grants focused on secure communication and human-machine interaction. By identifying these specific gaps now, MHEC is providing the roadmap for Maryland institutions to secure first mover status. This ensures that when federal agencies or private industries look for next generation specialists in quantum infrastructure or sustainable architecture, they will find them here in Maryland and not in a neighboring state. Additionally, I'd like to briefly address a few other points raised in the analysis. On page 17, DLS noted that the administrative procedure guide was not readily accessible. While it was developed and used internally, it was not on our website. We took immediate corrective action to link to the guide and have implemented internal publication checkpoints so that this does not happen in the future. Regarding the HBCU impact evaluation report on page 18, DLS indicates that this report was not submitted. I want to clarify that the statute distinguishes between January 1 internal review and a September 1 reporting deadline. We did transmit the report on September 1st, 2025. However, it is under resubmission. The issue reflects a technical resubmission requirement for formatting rather than a failure to conduct the review. And I'd like to iterate that this is an annual report, so you will be getting an update to this report every September moving forward. Regarding the update to the 2022 state plan and the workforce needs integration, we have now updated the webpage regarding the 2022 state plan to include a direct link to the workforce needs analysis, ensuring transparency while we develop the comprehensive 2026 state plan. Again, campuses are aware of these appendices and are actively using them in their analysis for program development. A few more points. On pages 18 and 19, DLS references delays in the letter of intent rollout. It's imperative to recall that MHEC worked closely with the legislature's work group from August to December 2023. Thank you, Chair King, for your leadership on that group. Final implementation timing was impacted by necessary statutory corrections passed just 8 months ago in May 2025. Our goal with the letter of intent, as articulated in statute, is to facilitate early collaborations and prevent duplication before institutions prepare a full academic proposal for MHEC's review. We developed a process that is acceptable to all segments of higher education through our newly established Program Review Process Advisory Council called the PRPAC. Delay in the LOI did not mean we were not accepting proposals. A few statistics for situational awareness. Since October 2025, we've processed more than 50 letters of intent. We are striving to respond to those letters of intent within 3 to 4 weeks. And in the last 2 years, we've processed over 1,093 academic proposals and approved 181 new degree programs, 93 in STEM and lighthouse sectors like AI. Finally, we intend to engage with campuses in a similar collaborative fashion as we develop a process for fully online programs that predominantly enroll out-of-state students. We again will continue that work through the Program Review Process Advisory Council. Our approach, as is the case with anything we do, prioritizes legal clarity and statewide consistency to ensure Maryland institutions remain competitive in the national marketplace. With that, I am happy to answer questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a couple issues here that before you go on, I would just like to make sure I get these answered. On the guaranteed access grants, it says that you reported that there were 457 students who may not have been eligible for the GA were awarded it for the 25-26 academic year. These students did not insert their family income into the proper field, and the income field was left blank. From what it says here, you had a vendor that didn't seem to be working out, but we still have that same vendor, correct?
I will turn an answer to that question over to Secretary Brown and my colleagues.
We have the same vendor, but we have taken internal control steps so that that issue doesn't happen again. I'm going to ask our Director for Financial Aid to give more details.
Okay.
Thank you. So with the change of the FAFSA in, I want to say, for the 24-25 academic year, with the federal government changing the layout of the FAFSA, what we found was there were certain components or areas within the FAFSA that were added that made up the total family income. The vendor missed that and did not put that in the calculations of the system, which caused that system error. The reason why we couldn't just not have that vendor is because the intricacy and complications of the system, which it would have stopped all financial aid processing.
To change vendors.
Unfortunately, as many of you know, we run into a lot of system issues with MD caps, as old of a system as it is, which is why we're focused on getting the new system. But to make that transition would have really put so many students at a disadvantage.
Okay. And it says here then, MHEC also mistakenly denied 172 students for the guaranteed access who were eligible, but you have since corrected the mistake.
So that fell into the same category where those students, it wasn't, well, they were awarded and then the system corrected to deny them or cancel their awards. As we identified the students that were incorrectly awarded, we also identified those students that were correctly originally awarded, but that system issue hit. So we re-awarded those students and communicated with those students immediately to let them know they did have their award.
Okay. Okay. And you also reported that there is sufficient existing funding for the Howard P. Rawlings program for fiscal 2026, so that no additional money will be needed due to either of the GA award mistakes. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay.
Just to add another point, Madam Chair, on the vendor issue, this is a very complicated and old database that we run. It's at least 24-year-old.
Yeah.
It does a lot of calculations within the database, which is not the way to architect, right?
Right.
But it was done a long time ago. So there are sensitivities with that, and there are not many companies that can come with the last minute and run this kind of database. So, and then we are developing a new system, and there's another vendor. So, having more than two vendors at the same time could have more operational issues. So we thought about it very carefully as we moved on the next steps there. We would like to address other questions that are raised
Okay.
here as well.
Okay, go ahead.
So thank you, Assistant Secretary Dow. Good morning or afternoon, I'm sorry, Madam Chair King, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Al Dorset, Executive Director of the Office of Student Financial Assistance, and I would also like to thank Sarah Baker for her thorough analysis. I will be focused on pages 19 and 20, where DLS requests clarification on delays, costs, implementation timeline, and student input of the new financial aid system. It is important to note that the statutory requirement to replace the MDCAP system was enacted at the end of fiscal year 2022. This effectively provided approximately 3 years to procure, design, build, and deploy a fully modernized statewide financial aid enterprise platform. For a system this size and scope, the timeline has always been an ambitious timeline. First count of that, or first factor, is the required interagency coordination involved with the RFP process. This effort requires sequential approval, collaboration among departments of information technology and Department of General Services, cybersecurity review teams, and state procurement requirements. Although each different department worked with MHEC to expedite the process as fast as possible, it still impacts the overall time frame of reviewing, approving before it can move to the next step. The second factor is the vendor bid protest escalating to the Board of Contracts, in which the two separate vendors that had bid both protested and escalated to the Maryland Board of Contract Appeals and required formal legal resolution before the procurement process could begin, pushing back the start date, or the official start date that we had looked at in November, all the way till March 2025. I will note that at that time when we saw that, we did look and put in for or notify the General Assembly of a request for the timeline to be pushed back because of that. Reason for that is the scope of the project. The technical complexity of the system itself. Maryland administers more than 27 distinct financial aid programs, each with a unique statutory rules, eligibility formula, verification requirements, and reporting obligations. So the configuring these programs into a single modern platform requires substantial technical design, testing, validation to assure accuracy and compliance. To this day, there's really no financial aid system for the states that is generally built across, like institutions have, that is just you implement it in and it can handle all state programs. So we're building this up from literally ground up and really making this a impactful system that I think other states are going to want. Turning to the current status of the project as reflect.
I don't care if other states want to implement what we're doing. I just want ours to be right.
Yes.
I don't care about the other states.
I totally understand. Turning to the current status of the project as reflected in February 6, 2026 project status report, the Maryland Student Information Services System, or what we call MDSIS, is formally designated on-track implementation beginning with the 27-28 academic year. Significant progress has already been achieved. This includes currently setting up and customizing the eligibility and processing rules for more than 27 state financial programs, finalization of research portal use cases to support policy analysis and reporting, successfully moved software for the system into the Maryland Higher Education Commission's secure technical environment, actively transitioning from planning to operational implementation, moving conceptual design into practical execution, and launch of structured staff training to prepare for operational transition. With respect to the project cost, the estimated total implementation is expected to remains between $10 million to $20 million. To date, the General Assembly has appropriated $13.4 million towards this modernization effort. Finally, regarding student input and immediate service improvements, as the project now moves forward into implementation, just as we did with our different segments, including our General Assembly members, the Commission is organizing a student review group to gather direct student perspectives and feedback on the new system to help final deployment and user experience. Additionally, while the enterprise system continues in development, the Commission has already taken steps to improve student access today. In 2024, the Commission implemented the MHEC One app, a single smart application that allows applicants to apply for multiple state financial programs at one time. Building on this progress, the application for 26-27 academic year opened January 15th, and that wasn't just for the Guaranteed Access Grant, but that was for all of our programs that fall under MDCAPS, triggering the earliest application opening date in the agency's history. The forthcoming modernization system will further enhance students' experience by supporting a single unified financial aid application, full mobile accessibility, multilingual functionality, and electronic document uploads, as well as digital signatures. So the system is progressing responsibly and remains on track. And I will open up to any questions if you may have.
Senator Bailey, do you have a question?
So, first off, I want to say I want to thank each and every one of you for your commitment and for working, and trying to make this better. Obviously, when I see the mandated reports and I see all of these reports that aren't done, sometimes, Mr. Secretary, with all respect, it feels like, we make a lot of decisions here based on higher education, right? And we need this information to try to make the best reports and to make the best decisions that we can to try to help, especially when it comes to higher education and providing people with scholarships, just like the police scholarships that we have worked on, and I applaud you all for working higher this year. But we got many more people using them this year than what we have in the past. But we didn't utilize the amount of money, and now, now we can't use that next year and we were behind. And I guess where I am, if I could just, obviously. You made the point very clear that when you got the job and you all are new, right? You're in a boat that was taking on some water, and I just want to know from you that if the bailing that you're doing is working, or are you just driving more holes in the boat and we're sinking faster, because sometimes when I see these reports and I see how diligent the Office of Legislative Audits is, and I know, we have a lot of people sit in these chairs, right? And these people work very diligently to try to get these reports in, right? If you could just work with them, to say, hey, we're going to be a couple days late. Everybody understands life. Right, but 14 reports in 1 year is a big ask. I mean, So if you would be so kind as to just let me know whether you think we're just sinking or whether the bail-in's working.
So let me make this very clear. This boat is not sinking.
Okay.
Obviously, your analogy with holes is certainly correct. And we have been filling those holes as quickly as possible. And especially your observations about the reports. We have a planned response to each one of them. And what you will see in response when Ms. Music gives a detailed report on those delays, you will hear that over the years, certainly a number of reports have gone up. Second, you will hear that we had a staff transition individual who used to submit this for many, many years, retired, and then we had a gap in between. It's not that those reports were not prepared. Those reports were prepared, but obviously our new staff and all of us were not as used to the formatting requirements. So over the last few months, we have been working very diligently, and we thank DLS staff that has been working with us and helping us with the formatting issues. So just give us another second. When we come to that section, I think you will get more update, and it's my hope that you and others who are watching will be very satisfied with our response, that we had an issue, we work collaboratively with DLS, and we are closing on all those reports very, very soon. Can you go to the next?
Yeah, there's a couple more questions. Senator Gordon, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And Secretary, I appreciate that. I'll hold the question on the reports as well, because it sounds like that's going to come up. But I did want to, some of the things I already discussed, I wanted to touch on. The workforce needs. And maybe I'm missing it here, and I think I probably could find it. I've been reading your response that you put in at the same time, and I think I found it was a footnote. There's a lot of references to the appendixes. Appendix D, Appendix C, Appendix B, a lot of back and forth, and I appreciate the testimony. But none of that information is anywhere here to see. So I would just encourage in the future, if that's how we're trying to put this together, to maybe provide that information in a more accessible way. Because it references all these appendixes, but they're nowhere in the response. Like I said, I found a footnote on the bottom, and then you go to a web page. It's very disjointed to a certain point. I think the overall arching theme I've heard so far, and again, as my colleagues said, with all due respect, we have a saying around here, when you're explaining, you're losing. And there's a lot of explaining going on right now. And, with the workforce needs itself, it's still, even trying to go back and put that all together, it just seems it's disjointed as far as what the actual ask was, right? And I understand you're explaining, well, this appendix says this, and this appendix says this, but I don't think that was really the task at hand. The other parts here coming after it were, there were some delays with some statutory things. There was a bill that's referenced that passed, and then a corrected bill the year after. You knew the corrected bill was coming, right? And so the response that, well, it didn't come into effect until May or spring or whatever. Well, you knew it was coming. You put the bill in. The chair put the bill in January. So I think a more proactive approach, as opposed to on the backside using a reactive, well, we couldn't do it because we're waiting for the bill to pass. That doesn't really pass my test, because you put the bill in, you knew it was going to pass. And then lastly, I think to the chair's point, COVID, Mr. Secretary, as you know more than anybody ever in this room, that ended in 2023. You came on board in 2023. You were here maybe 3 or 4 months of COVID. So I've not heard anyone use that excuse in this room in many, many years. So I understand that we're trying to put some things together here, but I think that, again, there's a lot of explaining going on here right now, and I don't think it's really leading to the right point at the moment. But I do look forward to the conversation on the reports here, because I think that has gotten all of our attention here.
Senator, thank you for those observations. And we were not waiting for the correct bill to pass. We had started working. We were working on the workforce group that Senator King was co-chairing. We started working from that point. If we waited for the bill to pass in spring 2025, we'll be further behind. Some of the delay that you heard about a letter of intent process, it is because the bill, and rightfully so, asks us to establish a program review council. Establishment of that council, then working with the council so that the process that we are coming up with letter of intent is acceptable to all segments of our institutions. We went back and forth. So first, this council has to approve that. They meet monthly, so they took a couple of months, 2 or 3 meetings to finalize. Then commission has to approve that, right? So the commission approved it. So we have been working since 24. We didn't wait until 25 to do that. So the other observation that because of LOI being delayed, institutions could not submit academic proposal. What we like to say, while we were establishing the process, we were accepting the proposals as well. So, we, in past 2 years, almost 1,100 academic proposals were processed. So we didn't wait. We expedited everything, but because the statute, and rightfully so, requires that we create this process in certain manner, so that took a little bit more time. The mention of COVID is certainly in the context of our audit. Audit period was 2020 to 2023. While we were not here, but I'm going to defend people who are here. At that time, a lot of staff went home suddenly without proper technology, and they could not do certain functions like reconciliation, account balances, things like that. So those findings originate from that period where the staff didn't have proper access. So certainly as a reason, but we reconcile accounts. If auditors come again and do the audit, we will not have those findings. I can assure you for that. So can we move?
Well, one thing, Mr. Secretary, real quick, respectfully, prior to the COVID thing, your written testimony in regards to letter of intent says, following enactment, MHEC moved expeditiously. To me, that means you waited till after to move. So you might want to be clear in your responses next time, because what you have submitted to us articulates that you didn't do this until after it was enacted. So that was why I was asking.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. So there was everything we were working. There was a certain part where we were not publicly engaging because of two versions of the bill at that time. But
I think that answer says it all.
Yeah, we should probably use better wording there.
If I may just add to that, the corrected bill did impact how the letter of intent process and who was required to participate in the letter of intent process. We needed to convene the PRPAC to do that work. We convened them. We started conversations regarding it. There is an interaction between the correction and what needed to happen for letters of intent. Once we got clarity with that, we moved forward. We were advised by our AG that while we knew a bill was coming, the existing statute was the statute we needed to follow. We did want to wait to see what happened during the legislative session. As you know, academic program review is a very contentious issue, and we were advised, and we needed to kind of see that process through. That the letter of intent process is up and running. We are using it as a way to communicate with campuses on early duplication and opportunities for collaboration. We're excited about that. We think it's a good thing. We've heard from some campuses that they appreciate the feedback, so it is working at this point. Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We're going to skip a little ahead really quick because
That's fine,
legislative
because I
mandated
think
reports.
we've gotten what we need out of this.
Perfect. So good afternoon. For the record, my name is Megan Music. I serve as the Executive Director of External and Legislative Affairs at the Maryland Higher Education Commission. So I will be addressing issue 4 in the DLS analysis, referenced on page 20, the mandated legislative reports. MHEC acknowledges that not all mandated reports were submitted in full alignment with statutory deadlines and formatting requirements. We take reporting to the General Assembly as a core statutory responsibility, and we do take this compliance seriously. The issue we have identified was not a lack of effort or a disregard for reporting obligations, but rather a disorganization of centralized internal procedure during a period of significant leadership transition within the agency. Report drafting occurred across several different divisions, but there was no formal agency-wide pre-submission compliance checkpoint to verify formatting alignment, statutory citation standards, and technical requirements before transmittal. The agency experienced major transitions during this time, including the departure of our former Executive Director of External and Legislative Relations in July, as well as the retirement of our Assistant Secretary of Finance and Administration. When I joined the agency in late September of 2025, I immediately conducted a comprehensive reconciliation of all legislative mandated reports and our joint chairman reports. Over the past 5 months, I've worked in close partnership with the Department of Legislative Services, particularly Sarah Albert, to clarify formatting expectations, reconcile our submission history, and ensure alignment between internal tracking and our Department of Legislative Services records. Sarah and I speak very frequently to confirm that we are on the right track, and she has noted a significant improvement in communication, responsiveness, and energy around compliance for the agency. During this review, we have now shifted from that decentralized drafting model to a much more centralized compliance structure. Specifically, we have implemented within our agency a standardized agency-wide template aligned with the DLS formatting requirements, a centralized reporting tracker maintained within our Office of External and Legislative Relations, a clearly assigned internal ownership for each statutory required report, so we know who's responsible for the data collection. Formal pre-submission compliance review in advance of the statutory deadline to make sure it is up to date in the correct format so we have no issues with submission, as well as cross-divisional coordination meetings to confirm status of report, to check in, to make sure we're on track. So if we're not, we can be able to communicate that with the legislature and say, we have an issue, we need further time for data collection. These changes are in fact now embedded within daily operations and no longer informal practices. As of 2026, MHEC was tracking a total of 50 mandated reports, not including our joint chairman reports. As of this week, MHEC has about 8 left outstanding reports that are in process with DLS out of that 31 listed in our analysis. These include annual, biannual, one-time, annually, quarterly, trigger-based interim and final reports, several with sunset provisions, and some with unspecified due dates. Over the past few years, MHEC has also seen an increase in legislative reports. This is a substantial compliance portfolio for an agency with a small administrative footprint for each department. Over the course of this reconciliation, we have also identified reports tied to programs that no longer receive funding or may no longer be statutorily active. We are again working with the Department of Legislative Services to confirm which reporting obligations remain in effect to ensure that we have accuracy and avoid duplication. I also want to note that 2 of our joint chairman reports were submitted in December, and as of this week, again, the majority of outstanding reports have either been submitted, resubmitted with correct formatting, or have a formal status with a notice of late submission on file stating when we expect to get those reports in. For those not formally submitted, again, we're working with the Department of Legislative Services to confirm those specific requirements, or we're also waiting on external partner submissions to us to be able to formally submit to the Department of Legislative Services. The past 5 months have most definitely been focused on structure, building it, the accountability, and transparency. We are 100% moving from a reactive reporting process to a much, much more proactive compliance framework. MHEC remains fully committed to statutory adherence and to continue our partnership with the Department of Legislative Services to ensure that these issues do not reoccur. And I just want to highlight that a question that came up previously was with regards to why has this been an issue for so many years, even with our current new leadership team. And what I have found based on the research that I've done, talking with people, talking with Sarah Albert, is that there was a misunderstanding of specific templates that are required to kind of check the box of a formal submission to Department of Legislative Services. And the question was, doesn't DLS have a formal structure? And yes, their website is excellent. Sarah Albert is 100% excellent, answers questions. But based on previous reports that have come to me that were submitted but weren't submitted was because, for example, an MSAR number was on the title page, or the email submission did not have the citation MSAR number. And so it's spending time also internally with the agency for each team leads that are responsible for the legislative mandated reports to go through and show, here's what it should look like, here's what we need, but also a shared drive, essentially, with the templates in there for JCR, for legislative mandated reports. So it's also not information with one person. So anybody has access. We're on track and currently updating to make sure that as we move forward, all of our reports are turned in either in advance or on time. And if late, there is a notice of late submission being submitted.
Okay, thank you very much. I have scholarship questions, but we have another bite of the apple with you guys coming before us, so I'm going to save those questions until that time. So, Senator Quarterman?
Yeah, and again, I appreciate the detailed response in regards to the reports. A couple of things that I just wanted to hone in on. I believe I heard you say there's still 8 reports left. Was that the correct answer? I think you said it because it was showing 14 here. Or 18 here, whatever number
We
it was.
have,
About 8
as
that are
of
left?
this week, we have approximately 11 left.
Okay.
And those are inclusive of reports that we're waiting on details from external partners.
Gotcha.
Or reports that are from previous years that go back to 2022.
Okay.
That is working with the teams to find who holds that actual copy. So essentially, I can make sure it's in the right format to resubmit.
When you talk about previous years also, because when you look back the previous year, there was, I think, I don't know, a handful that were not received in either, 10 to 13, somewhere in that range. Do those roll over to the next, so are those part of the 2025 number also that have been received, or they're still two separate? Like, did we ever get those reports back from 2024?
According to my conversations with Sarah Albert in the Department of Legislative Services, she has instructed that before we submit anything for 2025, we have to confirm
Okay.
those backdated items.
So 2024 is done. Okay. All right, well, I appreciate that. I think also what kind of stuck out a little bit was there was a transition period you talked about with a lot of changeover and things of that nature that happened. And Secretary, that's right in your wheelhouse. Okay, that's why you're the Secretary. So we need you to right that ship. So I know that Senator Bailey was talking about, as the ship's sinking. When I hear you have a significant changeover in staff and things like that, that's on you, right? And that's on you to make sure that is brought in and brought up to speed in a relatively quick manner, so we don't have these issues. I understand, I'm sure there's a learning curve coming on with the different, you said if things were submitted and they didn't have the right number, they're kicked back and things of that nature. But respectfully, like it was said earlier, we have tons of agencies that come here every day with reports, and we don't typically ever see a report card like this in reports, except for this. And so, we want to make sure that doesn't continue to be a trend, because what we're seeing here now is not a one-off. When you look at the last 3 years, it has continued to escalate each and every year. And so we will remain hopeful that we're on the right track here. But I again would go back to you that it's your leadership, sir. I appreciate you leading off that you thank Sarah. I thank her too, because I think she was very kind to you. It could have been, from what we're seeing, she was very kind. I know you thanked the administration also, and I think you should thank them because there's been a lot of change over with secretaries, and we need you to right this ship, okay?
No, Senator, thank you for that observation. Let me assure you that we have been working very diligently, and as you see the progress being made. When we were building our team, this was a very important issue for me. And in all the interviews, that's the first thing I was asking. I have learned myself, I think, formatting now. So you can see my very close engagement with this word. But if it's up to me, right now, our agency is developing standard operating procedures. Mm-hmm. So everything is not an employee's mind. So bringing really things to a really functional agency. When I came in, a lot of things, this person does that, and that's the only person knows what the process is. So imagine changing all that. And
I get it, but
so,
this isn't your first year either, though.
So I know. So we are getting there. Yeah. And if it's up to me, I will probably design a system, at least within my agency, where people, it's like a database where they can submit things. It has specific sections. So this thing
You're talking
that.
about submittable DGS pads. I would not recommend that. But
No, not for our own agency.
Yeah.
We can try to do so that it's not employee dependent.
Understood. All right, well, thank you.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, I'm Matt Power, the president of MICUA. We know you've had a long afternoon. We're a fresh breath of fresh air in here. We're going to be starting quickly and moving forward very quickly, just for a few remarks. We do not have any late reports, and we did not intend to explain anything other than how great our students are. So I just want to start off by thanking you for your support for the Salinger program last year. It was critical to making sure that we preserve the momentum of all of our students throughout the state who are trying to enroll, persist, and graduate. And we also do want to thank the governor and the secretary for their continued support of Salinger and for maintaining level funding in the FY27 allowance. Salinger remains one of the Maryland's most direct student-centered investments. The dollars flow quickly and incredibly efficiently directly in the hands of Maryland students seeking the right fit campus and education that can allow them to graduate. The centuries-long partnership between MICUA institutions and the state has never been more vital. We're experiencing a truly unprecedented federal assault on higher education at the moment. Drastic research funding cuts, threats to academic freedom, looming changes that will arbitrarily separate admirable careers like nursing into professional and non-professional degrees. In this environment, predictable state support is not simply helpful, it's a lifeline to students pursuing their dreams and the institutions to make them achievable. We're grateful that the state of Maryland rejects this narrow-mindedness and will not retreat from educating its residents. We respectfully request that you support the governor's FY27 allowance for the Salinger program. While we're grateful for that level funding.
I do.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. While we're grateful for the level funding in FY27, we do hope at some point to return back to the formula-based funding. The formula itself ensures a fair distribution of state funds, allowing institutions with rising enrollments to help and support more students, spreading the dollars that you graciously appropriate to more Marylanders. It is also the most equitable way to ensure state support follows Maryland students. Finally, we hope that you're able to meet some of our students on last Tuesday. They were all down coming to talk to you about the great work that they're doing. Their drive, talent, and ambitions are what make this work great for all of us.
It's pretty refreshing, isn't it?
It is very refreshing. It really touches us, and it's our favorite day of the year to see the impact that this program has and the work that we have that happens down here actually impacts their daily lives and their pursuits. So thank you so much for your support. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the chair of the MICUA Board of Trustees, President Terry Sawyer.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Pleasure to be here. For the record, my name is Terrence Sawyer, and I'm the president of Loyola University, Maryland, and I'm also the chair of MICUA, and I promise you my remarks will be brief. We want to support and thank you for your continued support of Salinger funding. I just want to give a brief glimpse into how we use these funds at Loyola, and this would be similar to other MICUA institutions. We use them primarily for the ability to discount tuition and give need-based financial aid to students from the state of Maryland. And in our instance, many students from the city of Baltimore. Over the last few years, we've dramatically increased the percentage of students that come from Maryland, and particularly from Baltimore City. And we're very proud of that. And we are an institution with outstanding outcomes. Our students get hired, they get paid well, and we love to see the impact this has. Without Salinger funds, we would simply not be able to do the types of need-based financial aid that we do. And I would just like to proffer and give one particular statistic that I found sort of shocking. For every one student that we bring into our state to educate, one high school student, we export two. And that is simply not a ratio that we want to continue. As a Maryland resident myself, not just as a president of a university in this state, that is not good for the future of our state. And the MICUA institutions are uniquely poised to help address this situation because it is such an efficient bargain that the state makes. I am a product of the University of Maryland at College Park. I love our public institutions. If you would have told me when I was a student there that I would be the president of a college, it'd be like telling me I was going to live on the moon. There was no chance, but I was well educated. But the reality is that taxpayers spend $70,000 to produce a degree from the public institutions. We spend $4,000 to produce a degree from the independent colleges. That is not at all to discredit the great works that the publics do, but we are a great deal. And so Sellinger is a fantastic formula and program that allows us to do great things for our students and great things for Maryland. So we are thankful for your support and urge you to support the governor's budget this session. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I lost count of how many years I've fought for Sellinger funding. I mean, it's been a long time, but it's totally worth it. So.
Well, we are grateful for every year that you did it. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi. Thank you for having me. My name is Brad Sims. I'm the president of Capital Technology University in Laurel, Maryland. So we're their smallest member of MICUA, 1,250 students. And I'm like Terry, I didn't know I was ever going to be a president. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in construction management, built refineries around the United States, and accidentally went back to school, and here I am. You never know what happens, right? So, of course, Sellinger is our key here, and we're supporting what the governor has in the budget this year. A little bit about Capital Tech and the usage of the Sellinger. We have 3 degree areas, bachelor's, master's, and doctorate. The master's and doctorate are designed for full-time working individuals online, but the bachelor's are on campus. And so on campus, we have just STEM-only degrees that cover everything from artificial intelligence to pilots to engineers, safety managers, the works, and that cybersecurity is our largest area. Our undergraduate students, masters and doc, each are, as a profile, are minority majority students in a technical university, which is awesome. The undergraduate students have a 90% placement rate. We have a huge number of low-income students. Almost all of our students come from Maryland. Therefore, Sellinger is a key to help them make it affordable. Even though we do work hard to keep our tuition down, once you come to school, we only increase your tuition maybe, our guarantee is a max 1% a year. So we're keeping it down. And for our undergraduate students with the 90% placement rate, and that includes traditional age students and transfer students from the community college, we also guarantee them if they don't have a job in their career area, 90 days upon graduation, they can take 36 credits for free from us. And if they don't make a minimum starting salary of $60,000 a year, we'll cover their and their parents' quarterly loan payments. Now, we do that because the employers love students from the STEM areas, and we're very happy to support it and happy to support the industry of Maryland. So the more Sellinger I have, the more I can help Maryland students, especially those who I change lives that come from low income. I give them a career that they can take care of themselves and their families for the rest of their life. So Sellinger is a key point to help me get more of those students through the pipeline and back to the Maryland industry. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that ends it with you all. Is there anybody else that needs to speak here this afternoon? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.